right. So, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another one of our Be Well talks. So, Alyssa, if I could have you pull up our slides, we can jump right into the presentation for today. So again, just to make sure you are all in the right place and at the right talk, today's talk is titled Getting Unstuck When Life Feels Uncertain. And so I'm very pleased to have our speaker with us for today. If I could have the next slide, please. Perfect. So Alyssa, welcome. You are no stranger to Wellspring. So Alyssa Burkus has been a longtime Wellspring member and volunteer since 2001. She is a certified coach in Wellspring's cancer and chronic cancer coaching program. She has also been a longtime non-Hodgkin lymphoma survivor, and her recovery from a stem cell transplant in 2017 led her to develop a model for cancer recovery used in Wellspring's coaching programs. And on the side, and in addition, she is also an entrepreneur, a writer, a trainer, and a coach as well. So, Alyssa, thank you so much for being here today, and thank you for your time. We're very excited to have you present this topic with us, and I will pass the mic over to you.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm really glad that you're here today. If you're comfortable adding in the chat, just a quick comment about where you're joining us from today. And if you're comfortable to tell us a little bit about yourself, the one thing that brought you here today. The chat won't get picked up by the recording. Just everyone who is on the call will be able to see it. But I'm just curious where people are and what brought you here today. I am here because I'm an expert in uncertainty, and I have been living with non-Hodgkin lymphoma for 22 years now. I've had a chronic form that has come back a couple of times, and I've also had a second diagnosis with a more aggressive form of non-Hodgkin that was in 2017. You can see the details on the screen. I share this because I am in the mix with you from an uncertainty perspective. I don't come to this topic because I'm a psychotherapist or medical expert. I'm sharing my own experience with my struggles with uncertainty that have led me to working through some of these issues or needing to work through some of these issues for myself. I can see some of the locations and comments coming in the chat. Thank you so much for sharing those details. We have people from across the country, and it looks like some different cancer backgrounds as well. So for me, the challenges weren't just while I was in the midst of my diagnosis, but actually at times even sort of beyond that. And for me, there were times where I was dealing with the uncertainty of managing side effects post-treatment, and even sort of in the midst of pre-treatment, some of the issues that would come up that I hear time and time again in some of the coaching conversations we have. So things like, should I quit my job? Should I still save for retirement? Should I have kids? Will I see my kids grow up? Will I see my grandkids grow up? These are all questions that swirl and create this level of uncertainty that can make us feel stuck. We can feel like life is on hold and that we're paralyzed by the circumstances of cancer. And so for me, that came up a number of times in wondering, my diagnosis happened when I was 31. And at that point, was newly married, unsure about whether to make some of these choices as well because of my diagnosis. So this has been a process, over time that I've needed to work through. And I hope that what I'll share with you today will be the starting point of helping you feel a little more unstuck as well. So there's a lot of things that happen in the cancer experience along the continuum that can contribute to this feeling of uncertainty or feeling stuck. Everything from pre-diagnosis, where we don't even know if we have cancer yet, but we're wondering whether that symptom that's popping up, or whether it's something that we should have checked or deal with. And then the waiting for test results, waiting for the tests even to happen, going through treatment, dealing with side effects, wondering, whether we can make plans and carry them out, as we work through that process. And then post-treatment, the questioning about how soon until I'm starting to feel better, will it come back? Those types of things that we struggle with. That feeling of uncertainty is common. It's probably, in my coaching through Wellspring as a cancer recovery coach, it's one of the number one issues that people struggle with. If you can relate to this, I'd love to, hear your comment in the chat as well. If this resonates, if you're feeling some of that same stuckness from what I'm describing. The uncertainty and frustration can also come from this urgency we feel to optimize or maximize the time. Once we're post-treatment, I want to feel better right away. I want to get back to the life I have. How can I focus on dealing with what I'm dealing with or recovering when my family needs me back? How do I explain to people that I'm worried about recurrence when I've been told I'm in remission? How do I have these conversations? And so because I'm it can be a struggle to talk about these things with people and still feeling that sense of wanting to get back to the life we had and not knowing whether that will actually happen for us. It's difficult. It's difficult. I share all of this because I hope that through what I'm describing, both in my experience and other people, that this will help you feel less alone if these are some of the things that you're feeling too. I'm seeing a couple of comments in the chat as well that, someone said, I feel like I'm living from appointment to appointment or from test to test. Someone else said, a bit of anticipatory anxiety. Yes to all the waiting things. Thank you for sharing that. So pause for a moment, whether you write it in the chat, whether you're watching this later, and just reflecting for a moment. You're just thinking about where is this uncertainty impacting you? Where are you feeling stuck? If you could loosen that stuckness, what would that change for you in your life? What are the pieces that would help that be more clear? Notice I'm saying not necessarily clearing the uncertainty, but changing that stuck feeling, which is the piece that in some cases we have some control over. This great comment in this book that I loved, in the Vortex of Cancer, which is, oh my gosh, it just puts you right in that. All the other sounds get drowned out. All you hear is the beating of your heart, the drawing of your breath, the uncertainty of your footfall. It's that moment of all these emotions and things swirling around, not knowing how to take that first step forward. And part of what's compounding it is your brain hates uncertainty. Your brain is set up to be a future planning machine. It loves certainty, those rhythms and routines, that reaching for, making that cup of coffee without even needing to think about it. The knowing that there's certain situations that always play out a certain way, even the way we think about our life and some of the things we imagine are a planned sequence, right? I'm going to, get that first job. I'm going to find that life partner. I'm going to, on and on and on. Our brain thinks there's a fair amount of certainty to that, and it loves that because it's less work, right? The brain is used to looking at patterns and routines to help us predict without us even realizing what we need to do next. When things are unknown, it starts to think that everything is a threat, and you go into this hyper vigilance mode. Someone put in the chat this feeling of anticipatory anxiety, right? This feeling of, I don't know what's ahead, and so I have to be ready for everything. Your brain struggles with that because it wants to keep you safe. and it makes it difficult for it to focus. I say it like it's the separate entity, but it's obviously, inside and part of us. And so it wants to keep us as safe as possible. And that's where some of the feeling stuck or that freeze mode comes from. It doesn't have enough data to make those decisions. And so it just wants to hold you in place. Someone wrote in the comments, I feel paralyzed and in limbo, waiting for the cancer to be over so life can begin again. Oh, I relate to that so much. So the secret, it's not really a secret, but the piece that helped me unlock all the things that followed was the realization that I needed to work with what I knew today, and I had to figure out how to take a step forward. And so I love this quote from Margaret Heffernan about the only way to know the future is to make it, right? It's that whole hindsight's 2020. We really don't know what's going to happen until things play out. And so it's a bit of a mindset shift, right? I'm not promising that it will, remove this uncertainty or this stuckness completely. I wish that I could give that to you. But my hope is that as we talk through the mindset shifts and tiny steps forward that I was able to take, that there'll be some ideas for you as well about where to start to unlock that feeling of stuckness and being able to step into that future and whatever that might look like. And again, it's sort of separating the uncertainty from the what you can actually control. It's the working on how we handle the stress that uncertainty creates, right? And that's the piece that I hope will help in that reframing for you as well. So what does that look like? Again, I don't promise that this is like all day, every day, you'll just be able to let go of this uncertainty and magically do all the things. But if you can step into this thinking with me, even just for a few moments a day, it's the idea that we just focus on today. We don't know what the future will bring. Frankly, nobody knows. We've just had that veneer or that like wizard's curtain from the Wizard of Oz. We've had that removed because of our cancer diagnosis. In our ability to just focus on today and let go of the uncertainty of what tomorrow or beyond tomorrow, and think about, or at least this was the mantra that I adopted, which was, what's the small thing that I can do that could make today a great day? Something tiny that at the end of the day, aside from whatever stress and anxiety I was feeling or the unknown elements that created that added anxiety of when would I be going back to work? Would I be able to take that trip? Should I have kids, at one point in time? And, later when I was able to have kids, what did that mean? How long would I be able to parent them for? All those uncertain things would swirl around, but I could just park them for a moment and think about what's that small thing that, aside from all the things, the stresses that I'm feeling, what's the small thing that could make today feel great? So here's where I went to. I work in my job. I build models, small pictures that help explain complex ideas. It's just my brain likes to organize ideas into pictures. And so I created this picture for myself. I started on the left-hand side thinking about, I was spending a lot of time, in particular post-transplant, which is a stem cell transplant that I had at the end of 2017, and recovery in my case was slow. I started to think about, well, if I was going to have one small thing be great today, I needed to feel a little more energy, an ability to make that one small thing happen. And so I did some reading and some research to remind myself that some of the things that create that energy for us, that ability for us to do one small thing, comes from the things we eat and our ability to move our body. And I'm not talking about going for a hike or running a marathon or getting on a bike, tiny movement activities that can help us build some energy, which I know sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but once you start, walking to the mailbox or walking to the stop sign, you can start to feel a bit of that energy coming back. So the first half is really thinking about what are the things that I can do to help build and increase my energy or capacity. And then the second part of the equation was, okay, so then what am I going to do with that energy? What are the meaningful things in my life that I want to create, or the people that I want to connect with? What am I going to use that energy for? The good that I'm going to create relationships and connections with people. How am I going to use that energy in a way that feels good? And then the last piece was, as I'm starting to work through these things, I'm noticing that while I used to feel like I was spending all of my time in energy recovery because I was on the couch a lot or really not doing much of anything, I still needed a practice at the end of each day that helped me intentionally come back to refueling that energy. So those restful, restorative practices, tiny things, but little things that just reminded me that this energy that I started to see being created was not an infinite resource. And I needed to also be intentional about restoring those things. And as I'll explain in a moment, exactly how I did that for me. But I'll pause here just for a moment. If there's any questions or comments, please feel free to drop them in the chat. Is this making sense as I'm describing it? Can you see how the idea of thinking about our energy and how we use it might help create a little bit more momentum? Or do you need me to just get into the examples? See if there's any comments. Someone says, yes, it makes sense, and asking for examples. Okay, perfect. Here we go. So the first step was energy and the nourish side of nourishing our body. And I used the word nourish intentionally because I wanted to feel, and these are notes that that were right in the journaling that I was doing all through this time frame, playing around with the words that were going to help me step into this new way of thinking. So nourish, the idea of giving ourselves the things that help really fuel our body. And I'm not talking about this, diet change or, intermittent fasting or any of those kinds of things that we might be reading about. Just thinking about tiny, tiny things that, might be a new fruit that I add to my oatmeal, or it might be a reminder to have a snack in the afternoon and not go all the way from lunchtime to dinner, not forget to eat, or making a better choice in my afternoon snack. So just thinking about how am I fueling my body? Am I getting enough water? The really the basics when you think about nutrition, but that idea of it not being something that's forced on me or a diet, but small choices. So for me, I started, remembering to have a smoothie. My kids love smoothies. And so we would have a family smoothie, and I put some greens in there, and always felt like, I'm sneaking them in for me and for my kids, or teaching them to make a smoothie if I didn't have the energy to do that. Adding some frozen fruit to my oatmeal. Honestly, these were little things, but I really felt like I was taking a step towards creating some energy for what was ahead. And then the next piece, move your body. And again, I'm not talking about, the couch to 10K programs or anything that is, a massive amount. It's really almost like, I heard somebody call them exercise snacks or energy snacks, tiny bits of activity in whatever feels right and safe and ready for you. In my case, it started with some short walks outside, which was supposed to be doing through my transplant and afterwards, but I really wasn't doing. It was the winter time, and that's how I justified it, but I needed to get outside. I did some light stretching, and then eventually I decided that I wanted to try working on being able to complete just one push-up, which took me, if I remember correctly, weeks to do. But sort of letting go of what used to happen, what your body used to be able to do, and just celebrating those small movement wins that you're feeling as you start to take those small steps forward. Someone shared a quote in the chat from Veronique Vienne. Says, the only difference between an extraordinary life and an ordinary life is the extraordinary pleasures you find in the ordinary things. Oof, love that. Thank you for sharing that. So then with create, so that's your energy. You've got little bits of energy that you start to feel coming into your body. And then the create step is, okay, what am I going to do about it? This comes from, that interest in being generative, of creating small things that you can, share out into the world. It might be, if there's a hobby that you used to have, picking that back up again. Even if you used to have is, when you were a kid or 20 years ago, something that you took enjoyment in, playing the piano, even for small amount of time during the day. This is where some people sort of play with gardening or baking, creating a puzzle, dreaming. And if those things feel out of your reach, given where you're at in your current physical space, the idea of creating a thing, even practicing creating a thing feels too much. It might start with, if you're not able to garden like you used to, lying on the grass and daydreaming. If you don't have the energy to cook yet, create a recipe collection in Pinterest and share it with a friend. If you don't have the strength in your hands because you have some neuropathy and can't hold a knitting needle anymore, do a puzzle with pictures of mittens on them, or, collect some knitting, it's not recipe, patterns. Collect some patterns to start to, as you're feeling better, creating something in the future. But again, that idea of, what do we want to do with that energy and feel like we can leave our mark somewhere, somehow. And then part of energy out is this idea of connection. One of the reasons I added connection in here was I read the research from the palliative care nurse, Bronnie Ware. You might have seen posted the 5 regrets of the dying, which is somber and difficult, but really, really meaningful list. And one of them is, I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. And I extended that to mean wanting to really stay connected to the people who mattered most. And so taking, someone asked what the list was. It's I think it's 5 regrets of the dying by Bronnie Ware. She later wrote a book, but really there's a blog post somewhere where you can read through and find all of those. So using this energy that you're feeling and starting to feel with reminders to do things that connect you to somebody else, send a text to somebody, or, which is always shocking to my kids, the idea of actually picking up the phone, calling somebody and talking to them, send a card, just small ways to stay connected to the people who matter. And I noticed Wellspring added a link, so can find the list in the chat, and we'll find a way to share that with everybody when we share the recording as well. Energy recovery, so preparing for tomorrow. So as you start to make these small steps, which hopefully for just this moment today, this one thing you've chosen to do, things start to feel a little less stuck. Maybe not right away. Maybe it's a few days of trying this. Maybe it's a few weeks, but you will notice some shifts in energy, even mental energy around this feeling of uncertainty and stuckness. So the energy recovery piece also important. Again, even if you're spending, a lot of time still on the couch and don't feel like you have done anything that you need to recover from, starting these rituals and practices, it's an important, self-care is used a lot, but it's this idea that rest matters as much as all the doing. um, and that we need to make sure that we're making that a priority as well. So it might be a special cup of tea at the end of the day. Might be some stretching. There's relaxation or yoga nidra videos on YouTube, which is yoga nidra is like, I believe they describe it as sort of sleeping while the feeling of sleep, the rest that comes from sleeping, but you're still awake, something like that. I've only tried it once, but I know some people who have recommended it to me. And doing some reading or quiet reflection. There's been times where some people find journaling kind of hit or miss. So I leave it open, whatever journaling practice feels good to you. If the action of writing is something that can be helpful, I know for me it's been hugely helpful. But when I had no energy and still wanted to feel like I was capturing something from the day, I started I forget where I got it from, but a one beautiful thing practice. At the end of my day, what was one beautiful thing that I needed to say something, even in the muck of frustrations about all the uncertainty, I needed to think of something. And sometimes it was really a stretch, right? It's like, my tea stayed hot for longer than it usually does, or I was able to drink it while it was still hot, something like that, you know, on the scale of beautiful, maybe is, a baby step forward, but I needed to say something. And over time it was, I sat outside and felt the breeze, or I could see the garden was coming back into, spring mode. And so those small things were helpful to me. I see people are adding a couple of comments. Someone says, writing a journal of my journey helped me, and I shared it with those who wanted to read along. Oh, I love that. I was amazed at how many old and new friends would read it. Yeah, that's lovely. There's a website a friend of mine is using right now called Caring Bridge that lets you share those journal items with the people in your life that you want to keep connected to your path. And someone else says reading the Bible and prayer every night, and being thankful for blessings. Yeah, I love that. It's whatever practice feels right to you. You'll know as you spend some time. I mean, a big part of this is really tuning into the energy you're feeling, and that's in your body, and starting to get in touch with what your body needs in that moment. Oh, I feel like I'm kind of squished. I need to stretch, or haven't had enough water today. I need to have more water, or spend some time writing. Whatever that looks like, you'll be starting to tune in to what your body's feeling. And so why does all this help with uncertainty? I get this question when I talk to people about this. It's the feeling, at least this was for me, and my hope it is for you as well. It's the feeling that despite all the uncertainty, I was able to take some intentional steps towards creating a future that mattered to me, and a future that I had complete control over. Meaning, I don't know what level of strength will come back. I know that today I can work on walking to the mailbox. I have complete control over that. I might not get there, and that's okay, but I can make the choice to take those steps and work on that. And then the uncertainty in that moment is gone, because I get to decide that. I get to decide that, it seems like little things that are, to some people might seem silly, but the idea that I can choose to put some blueberries on my breakfast because they taste delicious, and that's going to be my one amazing thing at the end of the day, was delightful, that no one could take that away from me. I mean, aside from my kids eating those blueberries before I got to them, but you get the point. And similarly, I could decide based on the energy that I felt today, what that creating and connecting could look like. Maybe it was just one of those things because I really didn't have a lot of energy, and all it was a text to a longtime friend to say hi. I could still do that, even though I don't know what my tests are going to say, or how long I'm going to have this, little run of energy. I got to control that, and it felt great. And I was also, I think, the overarching question that drove me to working so intently on figuring this out was the idea that while I was lying on the couch and struggling with the uncertainty, I wasn't doing anything with the living of the life that I did have. I was so focused on what I didn't have, and I needed to bring myself into the things that I could do and really make meaning and purpose and intention out of what I did have. And these practices helped reinforce that, helped me expand that, over time. And I find myself coming back to them even now. I had an issue with, you may have seen on the screen I shared earlier, some issue with some chronic pain that flared up a year ago and left me sort of housebound. I wasn't able really to walk without a huge amount of pain very far. And so I came back to these practices again, more intently. They've always, there's nothing here that I'm sharing that is, world changing. These are all practices that you've likely heard of and that are familiar. But it brought me back to this feeling of doing some things intently with an idea of shaping my life in ways that felt meaningful. Losing my voice. So there's some other pieces just in the Wellspring Cancer Coaching Program that I just thought I would share as well that we talk about. The first is noticing the connection between how you're feeling in your body, the words you're using, and your emotions. Sometimes we can get really stuck. For me, I'll feel this anger and frustration building up, particularly around the uncertainty and my cancer situation. And a bit of movement, some stretching, walking outside for a few moments can help my body sort of release that tension and anger a little bit. And similarly, the words that we're using when we're shitting ourselves, I should be, feeling better by now. I should be. Or when someone says to us, why aren't try this? And you say, well, but, I can't because of this and that. It's changing your use of but to yes and to accept what they're saying and extend it. A centering practice, meaning sort of mindfulness meditation, but really small moments, sitting, if you're at a table, you can put your hands flat on the table or just sit relaxed in the chair and just taking a few deep breaths to let go of the noise and bring you back into the moment. And we also talk and help people build a journaling practice or habit in various forms in whatever way feels right to them. So that's a lot of different things. I hope there's been some, things that spark some new ways of thinking or some ideas for you, can help you feel a little more unstuck. As I say, I'm not promising that the uncertainty won't go away. Of course, I can't, wave a magic wand and do that. But I hope that you're able to start to feel less stuck, and that it's sort of living with the uncertainty or doing things in spite of the uncertainty that you're feeling. And it's a fine balance, and it can be tricky, I know. Sometimes you'll get the formula right and you'll feel like you had a great day, and other days it might be hard to overcome, and I get that. I'd love to hear in the chat, if you can, if there's one small thing that you might try that might help you feel less stuck too. Someone says breathing. Oh yeah, it's funny. It's such a fundamental thing. We do it without thinking about it, but the idea of sitting and centering or breathing. Love that. getting back to walking. Yes, I see that. There's something, if you're able to be outside, it's both the act of walking, but also the things you see, nature. A couple of people talking about shitting, stop the shitting yourself. Oh my gosh, that's such a big one. Um, Someone says MBSD, I'm not sure what that is. The reminder about the 5 regrets and the book Phosphorescence, great. If you have a way to reach out to us afterwards, their person says they're going to share it with their ovarian book club. What a great idea. I love that idea of a way to connect around a topic like that. Journaling, more mindful things like walking and reading instead of avoidance items like TV and video games. Yeah, I mean, distraction has its place too, right? It's that level of disengaging, right? But to be able to balance it is great. MBSDSO is mindfulness-based stress reduction. Oh, I love that. I'm going to look that up. Yes, exactly. Identifying more small, enjoyable things. Learning how to play chess. Yeah, one of my kids just taught me how to play chess. It's yeah, that's great. In our last few moments, I'm going to keep reading these out loud. They're amazing. Please also feel free to add if you have a question. If there's anything, I shared a lot about my experience, about, the pieces that I put together. If you have questions about my own cancer experience, my cancer coaching experience, the things we talk about in the model, please drop them in the chat. I'll try to get to as many of them as I can. Oh, swimming lessons, knitting. Oh my gosh, there's so many great things here. Someone writes to stop feeling guilty about not doing things that old me thinks I should be doing. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Focusing on today, every day. I'm starting to crochet a baby blanket, cancer experience. Noticing walks rather than fitness walks. Oh, I love that. Yeah. It's funny the difference between a walk with headphones and a walk without headphones. There's times where there's, great podcasts that I want to take in. I'm now back to being able to walk as I used to. I've managed to get through that chronic pain issue, which is amazing. And so, yeah, there's times where I want to listen to that really great podcast, but I try to tune out as much as I can. I'm also learning the harmony part for the Sounds of Silence song. Oh, that's awesome. It was just a quick recap. The taking a deep breath and focusing on today, even just for a tiny moment each day. Finding those sources of energy that feed in, building that energy, exploring your purpose and the meaningful things and meaningful ways to use that energy. Not skipping rest and recovery as an intentional step and something that you don't need to earn. And continuing to focus on the gains and not the gaps. And I say this all with, these are helpful reminders for myself too. I fall back and don't always get it right. Don't always get it half right. That's the thing with uncertainty is you really don't know what's ahead. Sometimes there are new challenges that get put in your way. Having these practices to come back to, though, can be that anchor for you to help you through those things. And just a reminder, there's so many programs at Wellspring, just a small pitch for Wellspring. In addition to the cancer coaching program, I've participated in a number of different programs for cancer patients, and they're fabulous. Okay, any other questions?
All right. Well, thank you for that, Alyssa. I just wanted to say, first off, thank you so much for such a wonderful, wonderful presentation. You covered so many different tools and so many different little ways to get started or be more intentional, or just, something so small can make honestly like such a big difference in
Yeah.
mood and helping cope with that anxiety. So I
Yeah.
just wanted to say thank you for sharing all of that, because I know it is so hard. Anxiety is such, when you've got so much uncertainty in your life and there's so many things that you have no control over, it can seem
Yeah.
like a very big, scary picture. So breaking it down into smaller things, more doable things, things that seem less overwhelming, I know it makes a world of a difference for myself on a day-to-day basis. So I can only imagine the difference that it would make to the rest of everyone listening as well. So I
I
just
hope
wanted to
so.
say
I
thank
hope
you for that.
so. Great.